Hello, I'm Locke, Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where my guest is Jason Ard. He's the Livingston Parish Sheriff. Sheriff Ard is going to talk to us about the 2016 Great Flood. He's going to talk to us about 80% of the parish was underwater and what his sheriff's department, his deputies and personnel did, saving human lives. He's going to talk to us about the trials and tribulations of the department, the people, the community there, and how the community's coming back strong. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Sheriff Jason Ard.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I have a Legal Lines tip for you. Remember, knowledge is power. And I want you to know if you're injured, Louisiana law grants you a variety of claims to make sure you're fully compensated. It's generally chopped up into several categories, the first being general damages. That's going to compensate you for your mental and physical pain and suffering, your scarring, disability, functional limitations, your loss of enjoyment of life. Also, it will compensate your family, frankly, for your loss of affection. It's called loss of consortium claim. Next category is specific damages. Those would be, say, for example, past and future lost wages, past and future medical expenses. You also have a claim sometimes for what's called punishment damages or punitive damages, typically only available when you're injured by a drunk party. Finally, you're entitled to legal interest from the date you file your lawsuit until you're paid and court costs. So my Legal Lines tip to you from me, Locke Meredith, make sure you know what your claims are.
This has been Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. I'm pleased to have back on the show Sheriff Jason Ard. He is the sheriff for Livingston Parish. Jason, it's great to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
I just did a show with Sheriff Sid Gotro, and 2016 was a very difficult year in a lot of ways. We had the tragedies of the murders of our law enforcement folks, and we had the flood, and you guys in your parish were, what, 80% underwater? What was it?
We were about 80% affected in our entire parish. So it was unlike anything I've ever seen. And we just have had a really rough year. And basically, if you go back and start, we actually had the floods in March of 2016.
You mentioned that, and I didn't even remember it.
Yes, and we...
And a tornado, what, last week or two?
A tornado a couple of weeks ago that affected about 15 homes. We had the protests and the loss of our fellow brothers and the officers in Baton Rouge and the sheriff's office over here. And then here comes this flood. It was totally unexpected.
Never had any experience like this in my life personally.
So I was involved in Katrina. I was one of the first teams that responded with the state police during Katrina, and seeing things that I thought I'd never see again.
You saw them again?
I saw them again in our parish. So that kind of brought back things, and that's the only thing I could compare it to in my 25 years in law enforcement.
And most folks don't know that Livingston Parish, and actually you taught me this, has more waterways.
Yeah, more navigable waterways than anybody else in Louisiana.
Unbelievable.
We have canals and
so you're sitting duck when a flood's coming.
Yes, and you know, it was one of the things that we've always said that could happen is during this flood, we became an island. There was only one way into Livingston Parish, and that was up LA 449 north through St. Helena. You couldn't get here through Baton Rouge. You couldn't get here through Hammond. You couldn't get here through the south.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, we became an island. So anytime I came to Baton Rouge, we had to fly over to Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge had to fly over to us. So all the meetings we were having, that's the only way you could do it. We had officers that were stranded in Baton Rouge from rescuing people on the river. We get turned around at night and wind up on this side of the river.
Really?
So it was very challenging from the time it started to the time it ended.
Well, and let's take folks to that period of time. We have what, 1 in a 1,000-year flood, what, 32 or so inches. You guys have what, 25 inches in different spots?
Well, we were like 31 inches.
So amazing. In 3 days, 31 inches.
Well, Friday morning, I remember the weather. Everybody remembers how, you know, the thunder and the lightning. My wife actually told me, hey, you need to get up and check our water. She said, it sounds like it's a lot of rain coming out. I said, don't worry about it.
And the intuition of your woman is very important.
I have to get up, look outside, and realize that, hey, this is just not normal.
Yeah.
We had a funeral to attend. We were driving to the funeral, and I was looking at homes that I've been looking at my whole life, seeing them, vehicles already underwater. I said, you know, something's not right. Made it to the funeral, didn't last very long, and I looked at her and said, we got to go. And then next thing you know, it's midnight Friday night. I have officers showing up from other parishes, a lot of sheriff deputies just showing up.
Knowing they need you.
We didn't really ask for them. They just knew that we were in a bind. It was that busy. Around 1 a.m. in the morning, I get a phone call from some of the deputies saying, look, man, we're in a bind. We're going to lose the 911 center. The 911 district is going underwater.
Communication.
We don't know what to do. I got in touch with some fire districts and said I need some pump trucks. We had inmates over there with sandbags. We're doing everything we can. We had 2 pump trucks with 10-inch lines pumping water, trying to keep this water out of the center. So I get there about 3 a.m. checking on them. By the time I could get there, I walk in, my dispatchers have their pants rolled up to their knees, and they're walking in water, dispatching calls, answering phone calls. And it's pretty busy. And about that time, we realized that Watson's taking on water in areas that we never thought. And that's the highest part of our parish.
Right.
And so that really concerns me. It's the least expected area this is going to happen. So I'm just thinking, what are we going to do? So we just do what we do. Let's just the rescues, come up with plans. So I knew real quick that this center was going down and we needed to come up with a plan before 6 a.m.
Then you're a lifelong resident. You had a lot of history.
I've been here my whole life. I've been here, I was here in '83. I was a kid running around in a boat behind 3-wheelers
Having fun
and stuff.
back then.
Right,
yeah.
but it's unlike we've ever seen. And I knew that if this center goes under and we don't get some kind of plan going, we're going to be in a bind.
Because you guys were sending out texts and communicating with the public.
And we're already 300 and 400 calls behind already. And that's not normal.
And that's folks who need rescue help.
They need rescue, they need help. In Watson area we have, and I tell this story, just how bad it was. Senator Dale Erdy called, his friend of mine, and said, look, I'm in my subdivision, we got water in our house, we're gonna move to the second floor, I need rescuing. He called me back a couple of times later and said, look, water's getting a little higher. I said, look, I don't mean no disrespect. When you get in your attic, call me. Until then, I'm not coming.
In other words, you're safe.
I
Safer than other people
that are in attics on rooftops. I got to get them first. So it wasn't about who you were. It's when we could get to you and who was the most. It was priority. And the priority is life-threatening. And that's right. And so, and he'll tell you that story. He said, I did. I got in the attic. I got a text from him and said, hey, Sheriff, I'm in the attic. I said, we're on the way. So we knew then we needed to go over that way. So, but we get there, we come up with a plan because we knew between 5:30 and 6 o'clock, a lot of people were sleeping. They had no clue they were flooded. There was tons and tons of stories of people getting out of their
never
bed
even thought about that.
And touched the floor and realized they had water in their house because they didn't even know water was in their house. That's how bad it was. So we come up with a plan. We put it in and moved the center to the EOC center in Livingston that wasn't flooding. We get it there, we're down for maybe a minute and we're back up. Phone calls are hitting, 40,000 phone calls are gonna shut your lines down, so that's going on. You get a phone call, same time, hey, we got problems at the detention center. I go over there.
Your prison.
At the prison, right. And we have roughly close to 700 inmates in this detention center, plus deputies. So we get there, we have a F-250 Ford with a lift kit on it that can barely make it across the parking lot to get to the building, which is a lot higher than a parking lot. We get in there, we realize right then and there this is not going to be good. We don't have water inside the building yet, but it's creeping in. I get on the phone with Secretary LeBlanc and Mike Renatz with the Sheriff's Association and said, look, we need help. I don't know what we're going to do, but we got to get these inmates out of here. They answered the call. They sent trucks from the Department of Corrections.
Rescued your inmates
rescued
from
every
the
one of
jails.
them, and they got them out of there right before, I'm talking minutes before we closed the bridge. And if they'd have closed the bridge, we wouldn't have been able to do anything. It would have been really bad. So things were really bad, but things were happening the way they needed to happen as well.
It's interesting too, Jason, because you've discussed that y'all were never stopped. You were using everybody. You had a lot of great equipment, and yet both you guys were overwhelmed. Sheriff Sid Gotro was overwhelmed. There was no way that the government could solve this problem for everybody, and that's when the Cajun Navy folks and your neighbors and
we had a lot of volunteers showed up. I remember getting phone calls just from friends that say, what can I do? I said, if you got a boat, go to a residence and just start rescuing people. I did not care if you wanted to rescue people, we needed to help rescuing people. We had a lot of teenagers. My son and some of his friends showed up and said, look, what can we do, Dad? And those kids really meant a lot to us because they knew the area.
Right.
So you had these military groups showing up with these rescue vehicles.
But they don't know where to go.
So you could put a teenager, on a truck with them, and they could take them and navigate with them. So those kind of things really help a tremendous amount.
All right, well, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. My special guest, Jason Ard, Livingston Parish Sheriff. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Document your claim. What do I mean? Whenever you present a claim, whether it's for injuries in an automobile collision or for a breach of contract case or a business claim, it all boils down to documentation and evidence. For example, when you go to trial, basically both sides are presenting their evidence of what they believe to be their case. For example, also, if you're involved in an automobile collision, document the event. Talk to all the parties who are involved. Get their names, address, contact information, insurance info. Talk to the witnesses on the scene. Also get their contact information. Take photographs. With the phones we all have these days, everybody can take a picture and that paints 1,000 words. So document your claim. The Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is document the claim.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Pleased to have back on the show Jason Ard. He is Livingston Parish Sheriff. We're talking about the tragedy of the flood and how Livingston Parish is dealing with it, but dealt with it also. So you've rescued just thousands of people, I assume.
Thousands, and it wasn't a sheriff's office situation. This was from fire department, sheriff's office, community organizations. It was our community coming together and communities around us, people from other states just coming in. What can we do to help? And it was just amazing to see the people come together, and no matter, they didn't care who you were, what you look at, we were going to rescue you.
Well,
and
Jason,
it was just working together, and it just meant a lot to me.
The demographics of Livingston is such a positive thing, because it seems like the tragedy of this, and yet the blessing of it is you have a lot of young families, a lot of old families,
Right.
folks moving there for the good schools and the good
Right.
family environment, and that obviously manifested itself in this tragedy. Give the folks some idea of some of the times you walked away and said, we just saved somebody's life.
It was so many of those. And I can go on and on about that, but this is my hero moment. Not for me, but for my deputies, because I had 80 deputies that was directly affected. They completely lost everything.
Say that again.
Folks
80 need to let that stuff soak in.
And 50 of them lost everything. They didn't even have any clothes.
Families,
everything. Those guys and those ladies came to work, never left. They would go home and check on their family. Very emotional, wipe their tears away and go back out. They never stopped. From Friday morning till Monday was one day for them.
holy moly.
On Mondays when we started telling people go home and get some rest. But it's hard to go home when you don't have a home to go to.
Right.
So I seen a lot of that. We went out, we helped rescue here and there, and there was a lot of that going on. But to me, I'll never forget that, what those deputies did.
That's
They
community
lost a
right
lot.
there.
It is. And, having to sleep on floors. And we just basically had the courthouse. That's where a lot of them slept. And I'd walk in my office and there's kids in there. And that's what we do. But and so it was really tough on them. But they got through it. And we were able to keep their spirits high. We did everything we could. I focused on those deputies. I felt like it was my job as their leader to make sure I kept them, their spirits up.
Right.
And we did that. So, and it was Tuesday, Wednesday, and then into Thursday, the water's moving around the parish, and it's just like going up over
Floods
here,
one
and it
spot,
go down and
goes
go
up
up and it go
and
back
under.
over here, and then we get down into the Marpaw, which is the southern part of the parish.
That's right. This lasted for days for you
Days,
guys. You
days.
finally have water settled down here, and then it's coming up over
Yes,
there.
when we rescued Watson, we moved a lot of people maybe to the Walker area. Well, where we had shelters set up, we had to re-rescue people because the shelter would go underwater. We must have did that dozens of times. I remember going to one church twice because they had two churches there, and they were in the front church, and then we moved them to the back church, and then we had to remove them again out of the back church. So that was going on nonstop. And so once it gets to Marpaw, I feel a little better, and this is why. I've been there 25 years. Marpaw always floods. Those residents are used to it. They don't even want you down there, but they work well with us. And they just kind of know what to expect. These people that were flooding before that,
No clue.
no clue because they never expected to flood. So it was just a little different, and it got a little bit easier. And then we had to change our mode. It was not, rescues were over. Looting had already began. And so I knew it was a big deal for us to keep these deputies out there 24/7 because the looters, they wasn't stopping. We had agencies come in. Most of them were sheriff's offices.
Isn't it? It's just unbelievable.
It was very sad, but it was also made me feel good to know that I had from Jefferson Parish, we had Webster Parish, we had so many parishes coming in, and they were sending the right people, and we were arresting up to 30 people every night.
Really?
And they were putting them in jail. We had to come up with them. We didn't have a prison. Remember, it shut down. We didn't have that. So we had to work with Tangipahoa and Ascension Parish and some other parishes to where they help us book these folks, and then we'd have to ship them up to North Louisiana to get them out of here. So we had something set up. We were able to continue that for several weeks, and if we wasn't able to do that, if these sheriffs wouldn't have sent their deputies, we'd have lost Livingston Parish. There's no doubt.
People would have robbed it blind.
They would have robbed. We were catching them all day long. I mean, it was just, and then the word got out. And then we just started seeing those numbers go from 30 down to 20, down to 10, down to 5 or 6. So then we basically shut it down. And it took us a little while, but the citizens were working with us.
Right.
But we had ghost towns. I mean, people weren't living in their homes. You had subdivisions. You had Greystone subdivision. We talked about it. It's a golf course. Yep. Beautiful subdivision, clubhouse, everything flooded, completely vacant. And so.
And water in some of the places, you mentioned, you know, it might be a foot in one spot, but some places were completely inundated.
Completely inundated. I remember riding down Jubin Road and looking at it, you could barely see the rooftop, barely see there was a house there. And it's just unbelievable. F-250 Ford trucks and four-wheel drive trucks, you could barely see the tailgate sticking out, maybe the top of the truck. That's how deep it was. And we were in big, huge, these big.
I was going to ask you about your equipment.
Yeah, the big trucks that we had from the military, the rescue vehicles, they have personnel carriers, and we had some of those trucks that couldn't get through the water.
Really?
It was really bad. We had so we had high water vehicles. I did have a few of them. The military brought a lot of them. Some of the fire departments had some. So we were utilizing those, but there was a lot of areas you couldn't get to. This is where it's really bad when you have the most navigable waterways in Louisiana. You may drive 3 miles in water running over mailboxes, then you get to an island and you stop. You may have 5 miles to walk and then you hit water again. So how are you going to load your boat up and carry the boat? So we had several people that were trapped that were, you know, it was hard to get to them. It was a lot of walking that was involved in that.
So after you've rescued the folks, you've taken out the looters, you got these bad contractor dudes coming in. Tell me how that
you know, that a lot of that's just starting to occur. Before the flood, our average contractor fraud around our parish was around 4 or 5 a year. We just didn't have that many. Since then, we've already went over 100. So the contractors are taking advantage, which just makes me sick at my stomach that they would do that. But that just shows you the type of people they are. A lot of them aren't from this area, but we do have a lot that are from this area, you know. But it's sad to see that this is happening. So we're having to make sure we educate a lot of the folks, but you got to also put yourself in their shoes. They don't have nowhere to go. They want to get back in their home. And some people are even willing to pay more money to get back in their home. And some people just want to do whatever they can to get back in their home. Right. So they're an easy target. And these contractors are taking advantage of that.
Well, let's talk about how the rebuild for Livingston Parish is going, because, you know, frankly, I've been very concerned. It's such a great parish and it's such great people, and yet this has been devastating. And you read that most of the folks had no insurance at all because they were in places that weren't supposed to flood according to the federal government, and now they're destitute. How's the rebuild going?
I think the rebuild actually for Livingston Parish is going better than I thought it would go. We're going to have a lot of people that are still struggling, and we have some of those that didn't have insurance that are still fighting with FEMA, and we have a lot of people that were able to go ahead and rebuild. They just started, you know, gutting their homes and started getting ready and started to get ready to change things and move to the right.
All right, well, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke, Meredith Legal Lines, Jason Ard, Livingston Parish Sheriff. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Document your claim. What do I mean? Whenever you present a claim, whether it's for injuries in an automobile collision or for a breach of contract case or a business claim, it all boils down to documentation and evidence. For example, when you go to trial, basically both sides are presenting their evidence of what they believe to be their case. For example, also, if you're involved in an automobile collision, Document the event. Talk to all the parties who are involved. Get their names, address, contact information, insurance info. Talk to the witnesses on the scene. Also get their contact information. Take photographs. With the phones we all have these days, everybody can take a picture and that paints 1,000 words. So document your claim. The Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is document the claim.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Pleased to have back on my show Jason Ard. He is the sheriff of Livingston Parish. Jason, let's dive back in. We were kind of finishing up last time and discussing the rebuild in Livingston. And I'm surprised to hear that you feel like it's going pretty daggone good.
I think it is. I think it's going better than expected. I think there's a lot of people, like I said, still that are struggling and may not be able to rebuild yet. But I think we've came a long way, and to be able to ride around the subdivisions, there's several homes under construction, so people are on the way to getting back to some normalcy.
All over the parish?
And it's all over the parish. So
that's great news.
I can't say that we have one area that just is shut down.
And how are the businesses doing? Because I've heard Jubin's back up and running.
That has helped a lot. We have most of our businesses are back up. They got up really quick. I think Jubin, most of them were back up in less than 90 days, and that was a tremendous shot in the arm for us.
Yeah.
It really helped us a lot. Walk-ons, just opening a restaurant up was a big help, and so we have seen that kind of be I guess a little bit of an inspiration.
I forgot Walk-ons is out there. I need to go see those guys.
Yeah,
okay.
So I actually ate lunch here today.
Well, tell me about how housing's going, because I know the state had this shelter in place for a while, which I heard was a fiasco. Congressman Graves told me it just was highly inefficient and ineffective, getting plastic stuff instead of stuff you would keep. We're hearing about these trailers that cost $100,000 that you could get for maybe 20 or 30. Tell me how you're dealing with all this.
Well, it was a
first of all, are you getting any money?
No. Well, we were very. I've never had to deal with FEMA before. This was one of my first times I've ever had to do anything, and I know that we've had some things happen like during Katrina, but it was never having to deal with people's personal property, people losing their homes. It was just different.
Right.
And so one of the things that concerned me more than anything, watching what we have seen in the past, which is Katrina, Rita, and Gustav, all those storms, is watching the departments fall. And we've seen this happen. And how do you hold your department together? How do you keep your office on their feet? And so remember, 80 of the deputies have lost a lot. 50 of them lost everything. So it's very important that I get them back in somewheres. So we work really hard, and I got with Sid Gotro, Sheriff Gotro, Mike Edmondson, Governor John Bell. The governor was helping us with this, and we were able to get a hotel room within 3 days. I had the deputies all law enforcement in a hotel room somewheres to where they can actually at least have their family somewheres to get them dry. And that was really important to me, because how are they going to protect the parish if we don't have them somewhere? And I know there's a lot of people hurting, a lot of people that don't have homes.
But these are the first responders.
That's my job here. My job is to keep this parish safe. And I knew when this looting started what was going to happen. So then we started working. We needed something more permanent. And these deputies weekly are getting a letter from the hotel manager saying you're going to be evicted by the end of the week. We're having to raise money. We can't get any help from FEMA. We're having to raise our money to get their hotel room paid for.
So we didn't hear any of this stuff.
Yeah, we're getting with FEMA. We're meeting with them, trying to find out, okay, what can we do? We can buy these trailers. How are we going to do this? So they guide us into a couple locations. I had actually picked out a location, which was the fairgrounds. It wouldn't cost a lot of money to set some trailers up there. They didn't like that location. They moved me to another location. So I asked the governor and a couple other people, hey, what do I need to buy? They said, you need to focus on mobile homes. They're not going to buy a little camper trailers with mobile homes. I said, not a problem. So I started shopping around. I said, no, I can buy these mobile homes, 16 by 80 trailers, for roughly $34,000, turn around and sell them anywhere between $25,000 and $30,000. So I can get my money back.
Yeah.
So we keep on, and all we're getting from FEMA is, well, we don't know about this, we don't know about this, hurry up and wait, and just on and on and on. Well, I got to the point where I had to make a decision. And my decision was to go ahead and go out on a limb and get these trailers, and get these deputies stable, because if I started losing deputies, we're already a office that does more with less. So if I have 10 or 15 deputies that walk away,
you lose the ability to do what you have to do.
I can't provide it. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is I have about 4 or 5 deputies that are St. Bernard deputies that lost everything in Katrina, and they also lost everything in this flood. So they've been through this twice. And they were a blessing to us because they were the ones that kept the spirits up. So they knew what their purpose was, and it was nice to have that. So again, it makes me work harder. So we got to keep these deputies together. So I needed to do something. So we were able to get everything set up.
Leadership.
We were able to, thank you. We were able to get everything set up, get the trailers in place, spent $3 million. Actually spent more money than I should have on the site because that's what FEMA wanted me to go. And what they wanted to do and how they wanted to spend money would probably been $11 million. So
you saved, holy
millions
moly,
of dollars.
Now, $8 million.
Easy. And you know, and
so a question, have you gotten your money back from FEMA yet?
No. Well, we lost 35 cars. 39 vehicles I lost. Cost me almost $800,000 to $900,000 to get it back. I got a check from them about $60,000. Those little things are going to add up.
Right.
And that, so today we're naturally like everybody else making sure, you know, what are we going to do for the future? How's this going to help? You know, how's this going to hurt us? Right now, we're very fortunate. Odom Graves, 2 sheriffs before me.
The daddy of
Willie
Graves.
Decided he was going to pass a dedicated half-cent sales tax. That passed, and it's dedicated to the sheriff's office. When I took office, that was roughly $4 million a year. Since then, it's got up to almost 12. A lot of that, and some of that's contributed to Bass Pro, You've been crossing, and the infrastructure we didn't have. It was a half cent of nothing then. Now it's becoming a half cent of something. That actually has helped us a lot.
Because you're actually better off than our sheriff here in East Baton Rouge Parish because he's tied strictly to property values.
A lot of sheriffs, very few sheriffs have that half-cent sales tax. So I am in some ways pretty good. But now I'm also getting $12 million from our property. What's going to happen with that? 20% decrease. And this year may be okay. What's going to happen in 18? What's going to happen in 19 when these values go down? So we don't know. So it's a little scary. Yeah,
so, because you're down what, probably 2.5 million or so.
That's the rough numbers that's going to be around that.
And you can't take a hit like that.
Can't take a hit like that. The average it costs for a deputy in Livingston, and everybody's going to be different. Mine's about $100,000 a year per deputy. Gas, insurance, uniforms, training, salary, overtime.
All the overhead stuff.
So you $2 million. You said $2 million. That's almost 20 deputies.
And you can't lose them.
And no, I can't lose them. We can't afford to lose them. We need. Our office needs 20 to 30 more enforcement officers now.
Tell me about the morale of you folks, because you know, with the tragedy of the officer murders last year, and frankly, it happening all over the nation, and the flood, how are they doing?
I think they're doing fairly well. Like everybody, we were very saddened by all the tragedies, very personally affected, of course, and but morale is something that even during the flood and protest is, as a leader, you got to make sure you stay on top of that. You got to make sure you do things to keep their morale up. And I thought that making sure we could get their families taken care of and making sure we get them in those mobile homes as quick as possible. And we did this like in 30 days. FEMA still has, we still have people that's living in tents and stuff, but they don't have a home yet. So I can only imagine where they would be at. So that was really important to me. And I think that those things actually helped a lot. And the deputies actually coming together, and we're a big family over there. And I think that our morale is really very stable. And I'm very proud of that.
Sheriff, thank you so much for giving us the story. It's a wonderful, wonderful description of the community. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. My special guest, Jason Ard, Livingston Parish Sheriff. Thanks for being with us.